Censorship. One of the biggest problems we face in this modern society of ours. Now, as far as that matter goes, I'm about 99.9% anti-censorship, with the only caveat being when you promote violence as a first response in a peaceful society, and you also have observable proof that you are a detrimental factor. Proof such as certain groups of people who like to throw rocks at cops and burn cars being recorded admitting they are your viewer. At that point, you're an extremist whose influence should be power grinded from the sands of history. It's one thing to be an asshole, it's another to be a proponent of anarchy and an architect of disorder. But other than that, censorship is a pretty atrocious concept. Think of it like this. Freedom of speech is the hallmark of the first world. If you can get arrested for what you say, be it public or private, you are being dominated by an authoritarian regime. Russia, North Korea, the United Kingdom, and Turkmenistan. No one wants to live in these countries or move to these countries because none of them have freedom of speech. Contrary to that, you have places like the United States, South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines, all of which are either first world societies or developing countries which attract far more tourists and expats, because you aren't liable to get arrested for a poor choice of words. When you have these kinds of censorship regimens in society, it brings down morale, because everyone feels like they're walking on eggshells. And unlike getting thrown out of your house and having to stay with your crazy Auntie Shelley, where the worst consequence possible is a stern talking to, the consequences in that context are legal warfare that could potentially ruin your life beyond repair. What we're going to be going into today is more about freedom of expression, another concept that is very important to be preserved and protected. So that brings us to the current drama with Steam and an activist group by the name of Collective Shout. This all started when they advocated for the shutdown of certain games on Steam that fell under the category of NSFW, and had some rather immoral interpretations of the birds and the bees. I'd like to say that word for the sake of covering this topic in a more earnest manner, because I do think it's important to give appropriate attention to dark subjects like this. But I want this channel monetized even more, so get mad at YouTube, not me, and thank you for understanding. Anyways, pretty low-hanging fruit, but it always is. One of the ways that people are manipulated into supporting an agenda that harms society is to target things that no one will really miss, such as those kinds of games. However, it only took 1 week, one single week, for them to go from targeting the most taboo subject matter in the NSFW genre to the whole genre itself. Now, whether you agree with their puritanical, hyper-moralistic philosophy is up to you, but you should be starting to see the problem either way. That is a really drastic jump. As you've no doubt surmised, Collective Shout is my main point of frustration. What they're doing is pushing for censorship. These games that they're targeting are still just that. Video games. Doesn't matter if they're NSFW or not, they're not really going to hurt anybody. And the problem with their actions is that they are escalating. First off, this group has gone after safe-for-work games in the past, such as GTA 5 and Detroit Become Human, which are far more tame than anything you'd find in the unfiltered section of Steam, where their supposed grievances lie. As a society, we really do need to get rid of this stereotype that video games are exclusively for children. They aren't. They just aren't. How many millennials are still tempted to boot up Mega Man Legends? How many guys in their late 20s couldn't escape the Call of Duty servers? And as the kids of today grew up into the adults of tomorrow, do you really think they'll never touch another video game for as long as they live after they've turned 18? No. So why do all video games need to be made for children? Why should it be considered creepy to have NSFW games when two things can be true? You can indulge in those guilty pleasures in private and still acknowledge that little Jimmy is not ready for this spicy visual novel. If organizations like Collective Shout are taken seriously, they'll continue to demand unnecessary social reform that will only damage the gaming industry as a whole. Right now it's sex. Tomorrow, though, it'll be violence. And don't think it won't be. They already tried in 2005. And it's just a far more vague genre to draw the line with. That won't stop pro-censorship activists from trying, though. Obviously, you have the grittier side of things like Mortal Kombat and God of War, but then you have silly cartoon violence in games, which is a lot safer for kids, thanks to its comedic undertones. Things like Cuphead, Plants vs. Zombies, or Scooby-Doo. And yes, if they are indulged, Collective Shout or organizations like them will eventually be compelled to target these mediums as well. Keep in mind, most of the people in Collective Shout are not gamers either. They're a bunch of miserable and angry Karens who got divorced by their husbands and ended up fucking up their chance for love a long time ago. These people are just miserable and resentful because they don't have anything better to do than sit at home and chug a ball of cheap champagne. Why should these kinds of people get to decide what video games you have the right to buy? And again, even if you agree with their puritanical views, it's still censorship. And when censorship is allowed, so too is pushing the boundary beyond an acceptable line. It doesn't even need to stop at gaming, nor will it. Let's say you want to spice things up with the wife. What is stopping you from ordering an adult toy off Amazon? It will be people like Collective Shout. Maybe you're a sword enthusiast and have an appreciation for the blades, so you want to buy a replica display for your house. Nope, can't have that either. Do you like guns? Hasn't anyone ever told you that mentally unstable man behind the trigger is not the threat? It's the tool in his hand. Cigarettes or alcohol? No. Those are addictive. Get rid of them so we can protect our women. Don't worry about the social backlash that might come from such a drastic action. There are just too many directions in which censorship can get out of hand. But let's get back to art and entertainment because I have another topic to whine about. There's going to be some people who use the argument that if you defend these taboo games, then you must be accepting of the idea of these themes being enacted upon real people in real life. And that's just dumb. Just because you like a certain form of media doesn't mean you endorse the actions being performed by the characters within the game, or that you want to go out and violate a dozen women while being brain dead enough to think you can force together your own harem of love-struck and adoring puppets just because you played some H game and got the wrong idea. No, most sane people can draw a line between reality and fiction. Media needs to be allowed to be dark to convey cautionary tales. Yes, some of the games that Collective Shout is trying to have banned do romanticize and glorify some really messed up stuff. But some of the games villainize it as well. They show how a hedonistic lifestyle can cause a lot of damage to a person and depict the horrifying consequences of surviving trauma. Why do you think people have a tendency to gravitate towards characters who have suffered greatly? It's because they pity them and resonate with their journey. Take Berserk, for instance. Not a video game, but its themes are in line with the perceived problem. The very first panel shows Guts clapping demon cheeks. It lets you know right off the bat that this is a very heavy-hearted manga for only the most stalwart and brave of readers. Struggle Snuggle is a very prevalent theme here, but it's never played for laughs or some twisted gratification of the reader. You're meant to empathize with characters like Guts and Casca after something really bad happens, not fap to the moments where they are torn away from their innocence. But we see just how often Twitter freaks are enraged by Berserk. Those kinds of idiots would be happy to see it pulled from the shelves, content knowing that you could never read that content again, even though it means that you would also never be able to connect with those deeper themes if you couldn't read that manga. How about a safe-for-work game that still depicts these themes? In Fallout New Vegas, there is a character named Cook, and yes, he abuses women in a intimately inappropriate manner, and then scars them with a flamethrower. If they have brothers or fathers, then these men will often be torched alive in front of the women. Doesn't sound like a very nice guy, right? It's because he's not written to be. And you can find his survivors throughout the Mojave. Even though it is a really dark side plot, the writers show realistic forms of PTSD that can be incurred from having to endure the machinations of a predator like Cook. What about Ellie? She's an underage girl in a post-apocalyptic setting. When you get to the winter section of The Last of Us, you encounter a cult full of cannibals. Leader amongst them is a man named David. It is made clear after he captures Ellie that he wants to control and possess her. The way in which he tenderly strokes her hand in the scene where Ellie is locked up in the cage is revealing of the deepest, darkest depths of his desires. He wants her physically, and it's not meant to elicit feelings of excitement from the player. This is an accurate depiction of creeps like Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, and P. Diddy. Now brace yourself, and let's end things off with an example that will really piss Collective Shout off. A not safe for work game. And this one's really dark, so I'll give you a few seconds to skip ahead if you don't feel like you can handle what we're about to be talking about. Alright, are all the snowflakes gone? Then we're talking about Black Souls. This is easily one of the darkest turn-based RPGs to ever exist. Because it's not a safe for work game, it has a lot of added liberties in the level of depravity it can touch upon. Compared to a game like Lisa the Painful, which is very similar in terms of theme, but doesn't have nudity or sex, so it relies on implication. Black Souls does no such thing, it doesn't need to. You can mash pistons with just about every girl in the game, one way or another. And whether consent is a privilege or a right depends on how you play. Sure, you can roleplay as Bill Cosby and just be the most evil motherfucker to ever exist. Or you could even turn off the H scenes altogether and effectively enjoy a safe for work game. So it's nice that they give you that option. However, it's not easy for the game to tell the story that it wants if you make that choice. The main character is not some handsome Chad with a six-pack and pecs thicker than his head, with the riz of Aphrodite herself, though you'd be forgiven for not believing that last point based on how the girls treat him. His name is literally Grim, and he is a depressed and mentally unstable guy living in a dark fantasy of his own making. This game has a bleak and depressing aesthetic that is shown in everything from the background to the plot to your enemies to the fates of the characters. It's not trying to get your rocks off, it's trying to unnerve you. There are multiple endings and not a lot of them are good. Even the good endings are a hollow fantasy akin to escapism. The girls that you can keep as either slaves, you know what kind, or companions all face some downright depressing fates. In one ending, you marry one of the girls and find out she is a succubi. As you can guess, she has certain needs, but you're all too happy to oblige, right? I mean, she's your wife after all. Well, her needs become more frequent over time. She'll come to you more and more each day and earlier with each day. As you can guess, this is a very exhausting ordeal for your character. In time, he just can't do it and she goes insane, effectively begging you to give her the old Yeller treatment before she does something she'll regret. Well, something she'll regret more so than carving your eye out with a spoon, and then parading around the fact that since you're a pseudo-immortal, she can basically do whatever she wants to you, and you'll just come back to life. And eventually you do have to put her out of her misery. This ending is an allegory for sex addiction, and it's disgusting and uncomfortable. It shows how exhausting that kind of obsession can be in its worst form, both for you and your would-be partner. And yet that kind of message will resonate with someone who struggles with addiction. It doesn't even need to be in line with the mature aspects of the game. It could be addiction in any form. They're all harmful in their own ways after all. The way Collective Shout went about their censorship attack is by targeting the payment processors of Steam. With that in mind, Steam should get their own. Remember that these games aren't even illegal to produce or play in the United States. They are not a violation of federal law. And I don't think they should be. We should not be censoring media. They make claims they're trying to protect the kids, but they're not. And why should the preservation of a child's innocence fall to greedy corporations and self-righteous activists? If Collective Shout was targeting games that were being marketed towards children, then their agenda would actually be justified, but that was never the case. These games aren't mislabeled either, so it's not like you don't know what you're getting into when you want to play one of these messed up games. If a kid is playing one of these games, it's not the child's fault, it's the parents. You can't give birth to a kid and then just let them wander off onto the internet. We've already seen with the most recent generation that is a very harmful thing to do anyways. The internet is not some padded cell for your child to just jump around wherever they want. It's your responsibility as their caretaker to keep them from the darker avenues of the web. And when I say your, I'm referring to anyone who has a kid. It's not like I'm calling out to you, random stranger with no child. Hey, go protect that kid. No, but there are a lot of parents that need to hear that, especially with the new let the iPad raise them parenting style that was popularized in the last 15 years. Can you imagine how much actual good Collective Shout could do if they actually advocated for something truly noble that would protect women and children? Like, I don't know, enforcement of international border security, or the prosecution of high-profile convicts who have a tendency to evade justice on account of a broken court system that favors the rich. But no, let's go after video games, guys! It sickens me when people try to tell me what video games I can or cannot play. And when it comes to that taboo genre we've talked about, another thing Collective Shout is trying to do is effectively assign a moral value to people they don't even know. We should not be deciding the value of another human being based on what video games they like to play or their browser history. That value should be assigned based on how they treat other human beings and whether or not they're an effective contributor to society by, I don't know, having an actual job, which I don't think most of these feminist activists have. But yeah, that's about it. Subscribe to the channel. For every human turned mermaid, we're one step closer to turning Collective Shout into divided silence. I'll see you guys later.